put back the shutdown because of the election. There was what most people think
You
was
need to say what shut
unnecessary.
down.
The internet shutdown. Yeah, the internet shutdown. And I think almost everyone expected that social media would be affected,
Yeah.
but pulling the plug on the actual internet. Uh, yeah,
Shocking.
yeah, shocking. I thought for me it was a little bit reckless, and I'm wondering, for a person in health,
Yeah.
what was the worst uh, sort of case scenario that happened, and what is the worst case scenario that could have even happened because of this?
It's tough, right? It's extremely tough. A lot of services depend almost entirely on the internet.
Yeah,
And, pulling the plug on the entire internet can have no positive benefit other than selfish pursuit. Um, in healthcare specifically, like a lot of people keep their medical records in the cloud. So you're in a situation where you can't even access a patient's past medical history, so that you can be able to provide an accurate, diagnosis or status on their health, or even to pull their medical history in case you need to refill their prescription for one reason or another. That alone is just disruptive for a lot of healthcare providers. In that regard, I think we had taken several steps to ensure that we implement a lot of technologies to be self-sufficient, especially if they're critical technologies, and having them hosted locally, and also still relying on basic technologies also as part of our service delivery channels. So, for instance, somebody could still be able to call into our toll-free lines to access the service, use SMS to get a callback request, right? But then there are certain services that are completely disrupted. So if you think about insurance as clients, insurance clients were not able to verify their identities, or we couldn't even look up their benefits and know if they're eligible to get a service. So all of that, had to happen, by sheer trust that, when the systems come back on, we'll see that you haven't consumed more than your
I
insurance is
see, I see, I
allowed,
see, I
right?
see.
And then also things like submission of insurance claims was again also impossible. Everything that was previously electronic had to be done on manual paper-based forms, which of course becomes inefficient, requires extra administrative burden to reconcile all this information. We have an online e-shop at rockethealth.shop where people can, purchase doctor consultations, pharmacy items, lab tests, vaccinations online. Of course, that was completely inaccessible. So a lot of self-service clients couldn't get this information. Even tougher that this is happening in the middle of a COVID 19 pandemic. We couldn't receive
Yeah,
electronic results of COVID 19 tests, right? All of that had to happen almost manually. You couldn't verify a COVID 19 result at the airport. So, even they're working on trust. You could have had fake results and been able to fly. They couldn't verify that this information
yeah.
was from the accredited labs. So, it's extremely disruptive in more ways I could probably, list.
I see. I know when I was still working at MCD, for example, and even before that, I was familiar with the I think it was NOH policy that would require all health uh, data basically to be kept within the country. I don't know if that applied to Uganda, but I know countries like Rwanda, even up to now, you're not allowed to. I think Rwanda, Zambia, where I work right now, we also work within sort of the same field. And I know Rwanda, Zambia, and Mozambique, you can't, at least to mention but a few, you can't move data out of the country, health data. I mean,
Yeah.
technically you can, but they sort of put those laws in order so
Yeah.
at least primarily,
Yeah.
or officially,
Yeah.
all your data is kept, all the health data is
Yeah.
kept for the citizens kept within the country. Uh, would this sort of, I know they did put it up to sort of predict that sort of speed of the internet in the future, but did this help in any way?
So, well, fortunately, we do keep servers locally. So, all our critical information about our patients is secured locally by us, and we can control the security protocols around that. And then we have that backed up at an off-site location that we can also defer to that is also in country. It's also important to keep, an encrypted backup in the cloud because you also never know what may happen at any of these locations. And yet you may still want to, provide services to people. So I think there is need. I mean, for a country to have regulations like that, you need to have made investments in the local infrastructure, right? So if it's data centers, do you have accredited world-class data centers in country that will provide alternatives to international options like AWS and so on. Right? Do you have the technical expertise in country to make sure that if there's a problem, you can get us back online, or we can have 99.9% uptime? Right? It's one thing to demand these things, but if you haven't made the investments, then you're just building castles in the
Yeah,
sky.
I agree. I agree. I know a few years back, I used to see. I thought MTN was trying to make a deal with Microsoft to have an Azure data center in the country. I don't know how realistic that was,
Yeah.
because again,
Well, now that we've shown that we can switch off the internet, I
yeah,
don't know
yeah,
if anybody would want to have a data center
exactly,
in this
exactly.
country.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, that's actually the other big question. What does this mean for investment, right? Because your company is a tech company. Tech
Yeah.
right now is very synonymous with the internet, and
Exactly.
the fact that people know that this could be one thing, the election could be one thing, but the other thing is you could get an investor who just has beef with
Yeah.
one of the first children or something like that. How safe are investors? What does it signal to investment?
I think my concern, and I think the biggest risk, is not that it happened, but more so that we don't know when it could happen again. And that unpredictability and that uncertainty is what's most unsettling. That, with no warning, no notice, you could be back in the dark
Yeah,
ages.
I see, I see.
And investors make bets on as much information as they can possibly get about the future. The investor is betting on the future, and the better they can predict the future, the more confident they will feel about making certain investments. So we need to build investor confidence, and if we take actions that don't do that, we in turn hurt ourselves and the investment climate.